Juggalos in recovery.
Juggalos in recovery, man.
Nope. All right. And with that, I kick it over to our president, Sober Frank. Take us away.
Thank you, Enzo. Let's see if this works. Nope, it did not work. We are going to go to this. There we go. Can everybody see me?
Yes.
All right. Well, as Enzo said, my name is Sober Frank. I am the president of Juggalos in Recovery. We are celebrating 10 years. Officially, it is on Monday, but we wanted to celebrate today due to it being the weekend and, most normal people have to work on Monday. I want to thank everyone here, whoever's going to show up, whoever has been here. What we're going to do today is, for the next hour or so, I will tell a little bit about my story, and then I will. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
Yes, sir.
After I tell my story for about the next hour or so, we are going to go through the WOA workshop. Willing to be honest, open-minded, and accepting. But a little bit about me. I'm originally from Massachusetts. I grew up there until I was 17 and joined the Air Force. My childhood was not the best. Could have been worse, but not the best. My mother, when I lived with my mother, she dealt with a lot of mental illness. She was diagnosed with bipolar. And back when I was growing up, they didn't really understand psychological and mental illnesses, so her medicine messed her up quite a bit. She also dealt with depression and anxiety and all kinds of stuff. So I ended up dealing with a lot of moving or living with other family members while my mother was getting herself taken care of the best she could. I was adopted by her brother and his wife at the time at 8.5. My little brother was already living with them. For me, while I was there, it was a mental, emotional, and physical abuse household. I was the oldest, and things were expected out of me, and my emotional state was never taken into account. It was either act right or get punished. While I was living with them, there was a lot of me attempting to run away, me getting forced to live outside in a camper that was in the driveway, away from the family. There was a lot of things that just alienated me from the family. I never fit in. I was always looked down upon. I never really felt love in that house. Um, when I was 16, I actually ran away to my mother's mother, my grandmother's house. That didn't last very long because that grandmother dealt with mental illness as well, to the point to where she had me taken away in an ambulance to a hospital to have a psych test done. While I was in the hospital, the child services people told me I was going to go live back with my adopted parents again. I told them, if you put me back in that house, I will run away. So I didn't have anywhere to go until I remembered about my grandfather and his wife. And then I finally started living with them until I joined the Air Force, which was basically the last half of my senior year. Once I joined the Air Force, looking back, I realized how naive I was and immature. I didn't really know what life was, what to expect. Um, Basic training wasn't hard for me. Uh, Living with my adopted parents was harder than basic training. So I kind of just skated right on through. Let's see. I remember the first time I was drinking. We were traveling from Lackland Air Force Base, Shepherd Air Force Base to Luke Air Force Base. So from Texas to Arizona, we were driving. Me and a couple of my classmates from tech school. A couple of them were most of them were over 21. And they asked me if I wanted to drink. I was like, I'll try something. The first night, I didn't get drunk. I think it was like one beer, and beer wasn't my thing, so I just went to sleep. When I woke up, I started the habit of saying I'll never drink again, and that night I got plastered for the first time in my life. I remember walking over there. It was 9 o'clock. Taking 3 shots of Captain Morgan. No chaser, just right off the bat, 3 shots. A couple mixed drinks, a couple more shots. Started drinking a beer, and I remember looking at the clock and seeing it was 9:30. And that's the last thing I remember until I woke up the next morning. I had puked on myself on the hospital bed, on the hotel bed, and then laid in it all night. I was hungover when I showed up to the military base as someone who was underage, because when I joined, I was 17, and I had just turned 18 at this point. And I didn't drink while I was in Arizona. Then I was stationed in Alaska, and Alaska was different. I didn't make a good name for myself right off the bat. My rebellious stage was coming out, so I was fighting my superiors and pushing back, which made me create a lot of enemies. It was a very long 3 years up there. Uh, I did start drinking again up there. Many different times, doing many different things. I ended up blacking out just about every time I drank. While I was up there, I actually turned 21 in Iraq in 2009. When me and my buddy came back from Iraq, we both turned 21 over there. We got drunk in the hotel room. I really don't remember much of anything that night. I remember some pieces, but there was random bits of information. But from that point forward, every weekend and sometimes during the week, I would drink until I blacked out. There was no one or two drinks here or there. Now, my life wasn't full of drinking. I did hang out with friends and played video games and went exploring. I went to a place up in Alaska called Sheena Hot Springs, which are natural hot springs. When it was 40 below outside, it was amazing. It was something I'll never forget. I remember seeing the Northern Lights, Aurora Borealis, dancing in the sky one night as I was driving home from work. That was beautiful. Um, but a lot of the reasons why I drank was because I didn't want to deal with emotion. I didn't want to deal with the pain that I had felt from that point up until that point in my life. I use drinking as a way to escape. Um, I was not the best airman. I could work my ass off though, but when it came to military standards, I just didn't care for the bullshit that went along with it. And then after I came back from Iraq, I got moved to southern New Mexico, where my drinking got really out of hand. I would throw dorm parties every weekend, no matter what shift I was on. I would give underages alcohol. I just didn't care. I ended up eventually getting kicked out of the military, moving to Illinois. I lived there for 5 years. I got kicked out in the end of 2011. So I got to Illinois September of 2011, beginning of October. In June of 2012, my mother passed. And she was 45. I was devastated. And I started spiraling worse than I already was. And a year to the day of her memorial service, July 5th of 2013 is my sobriety date, because that holiday weekend I hit the lowest of low for me. I got arrested for DUI, domestic assault, speeding 98 and 55. I don't really remember much about anything. I remember what I've been told and what the police report says. All I know is that I had an emotional break that led to me lashing out at people who didn't deserve it. I spent almost 2 full days in county. Once I got out, I wanted to get my life back together. Luckily for me, my biological father and my grandfather were both in sobriety. Both of them did it 2 different ways. I started in AA. My father told me I white knuckled it for the first 2 weeks after I got out of jail. Meaning, after I got out of jail, I stayed sober from pure willpower. But then I noticed how hard it was to do that, and I needed help. I went to my first AA meeting, thanks to my father telling me what to look for. And at the AA group that I went to, their tradition was, and probably still is, if it's someone's first meeting, they have what they call a first step meeting, which everyone goes around the room and talks about their rock bottom. And I went last. I sat on the very outskirts of the room. They had benches up along the walls. And I listened to every one of their stories. I realized just how similar my story was to everyone else's, and I told my story. And I broke down crying. And from that moment on, I knew that I needed to keep coming and keep working on myself. So for the next month and a half, I powered through my steps. I got my sponsor. I was going to meetings as much as I could, as much as when I lost my license, my sponsor picked me up and helped me get to the meetings. I powered through my steps. The reason why I powered through my steps is once I went through them the first time, then I can use them as a tool in an ongoing fashion now. So I don't believe I have ever sat down and gone through the steps again since I've been sober, but I actively go through the steps in every situation in life. If I end up having a problem or having a situation where I don't know what to do, I'll sit there and I'll be like, okay, where am I at in the steps with this situation? And a lot of the times I don't have control over the situation, which is step 1. You don't have control, your life is unmanageable, however you want to interpret that. So what usually ends up happening is I change my mindset and change my understanding of the situation and figure out what I can control. And what I can control in that situation is me and how I react and how I think. So that's what I do. The Serenity Prayer has always been a huge thing because it teaches exactly that. And it's one of my most used tools even to this day. I've said it so much in early sobriety, I would say as I closed my eyes and went to sleep that now I can't fall asleep without saying it. I'll lay there for an hour. Be like, why the hell can I fall asleep and realize that I didn't say this or anything occur in my head? The minute I say it, I'm asleep. I am not religious. I believe in a higher power. I don't believe that it is my responsibility to know what that higher power is. I use many different words, whether it's the carnival, the community, the higher power, God. Um, Anytime I say those things, I'm not talking about a specific version. I'm talking about the general sense. Because the way I see it, there's too many things that happen and have led me to where I am today that I cannot fathom a world where it's just happenstance. There's a reason why I am where I am doing the things that I'm doing. After I got sober, um, before I even hit a year, um, I started the Facebook group for this program, for this community. It was originally called Recovery in the Juggalo World. And we've gone through a lot of different logos, a lot of different changes, a lot of different aspects. When I first started, I want to run it exactly like AA because that's what worked for me. But that changed once I went to my first gathering in 2016. Yeah, 2016, Oklahoma. I started talking to people after I ran meetings. Actually, it was 2017 that it really changed. I talked to someone who was volunteering for a scrub care unit, and this person had a very strong opinion about AA and NA and how they are faith-based programs. And I was talking to Chris about it, and the people who were helping set up the Morton's List area in Indiana, and realized that to prevent people from feeling that same way, we needed to build a program based on something else. So the only thing that we ever have, the only thing we all have in common is we're all part of the same community. And that's what we focused on. In 2017, we rewrote me, Chris, 6 or 7 other ninjas at the gathering rewrote the 12 steps for Juggalos in recovery, and it's been that way since. And then it's been a very slow progression, and we are where we are today because of the community. Yes, I started it, but I will never take full credit for it because this program is something more than just me. As it has been pointed out, and I've been reminded for many times, I am just the tool that helped create it. And I am only one of the many tools that have helped make it to what it is today. With that, in my sobriety, I have gone through a lot of changes. I have struggled quite a bit, especially when it came to emotions, gone through therapy, dealt with PTSD, still dealing with PTSD. I have it pretty much under control at the moment thanks to therapy and medicine. Depression, anxiety, learning how to accept emotions for what they are and to live in them and not let them take over my life. My recent divorce tried me very, very hard in that aspect. My anxiety got so bad where it turned to paranoia. I didn't feel safe in my own house. And then after I came back from this last deployment, it turned to depression once the divorce was finalized, which was weird to me because outwardly I wanted it to be over. And inwardly I wanted it to be over too. I just didn't want to deal with the emotion that came with it. And the reality was that, yes, I did love her. And yes, my life is changing once again at almost 36 years old. I went from being a husband and a stepdad to being a single white man dealing with life and having to basically start my life over again for the upteenth time. I have worked very hard for everything I've done in my life, and it was and is a humbling experience to have to go through everything all over again and get back to where I was or better than I was before my last relationship. Um, One of the things that I strive to do in this organization and in my life is to help people understand that you are not defined by the pain that you feel internally, mental, emotional, or physical. What you truly are defined by is, at least from my perspective, is how you deal with it. Do you let that pain take over your life and who you are, or do you learn from it? And I have to live that way personally because if I don't, then my life becomes fucked. Um, so, using the divorce as an example, it was not a fun thing to go through. It hurt a lot in many different ways, more ways than I wanted it to. And the ultimate reality was, even though it was a shitty thing to go through, I still learned from it. I learned why I decided to be with her. I learned um, how much I had grown in spite of that relationship. I learned um, what my true boundaries, values, and morals are. I learned what types of red flags to look for in the future if slash when I ever go into a relationship again. and not even just relationships, just dealing with people in general. A lot of good came out of that relationship, even though it was a shitty thing to go through in the end. One of the things that it's helped me deal with and process is the shit that I refused to deal with when it came to my adopted mother, because my ex-wife was very similar to her in a lot of ways. And it allowed me to process those emotions and that trauma from my childhood to be able to grow even more. Um, what else? I haven't told my story in so long. Some things throughout my life up until this point that has had an impact, or things that I have processed since I've been sober. I've never really felt like I fit in anywhere or accepted for who I was. It took a while in sobriety to get to a point where I really don't care anymore whether you accept me for who I am or not, because I have finally accepted me for who I am. I am no longer a people pleaser. I could give two fucks about anybody else, and if they like what I'm doing, because I'm not here to please everyone. I do my best to be respectful, to be honest, to have integrity, um, to be compassionate and understanding. But if you're going to come at me and tell me I'm doing something wrong, then my words to you and advice to you is go find someone that you can get along with and that you vibe well with, because apparently I'm not the one. Don't put your pain on me because it's not mine. And that's a boundary that I had to learn, and it was a very hard lesson to learn at that. Um, I don't think I've talked about when I got introduced to ICP and stuff. I was so fucking naive when I got introduced to ICP. It was when I was in Alaska. A friend of mine from back home told me to listen to The Dating Game and Hocus Pocus, I believe. I was hooked from that point forward. I found out that one of my friends in high school was a juggalo, and back on MySpace days, I messaged him on MySpace and I asked him, I was like, hey, so what do I got to be a juggalo? What do I got to do to be a juggalo? And he was like, nothing, because I had been reading on all kinds of places on the internet that you had to like get jumped in and shit like that. And he was like, no, just be you. And I think that was one of my first things in life that it was my first step to accepting me for who I am. Even though that was a very long road for me to deal with. Then I found out one of the people in my dorms down the hall, he was a juggalo. He let me borrow Eye of the Storm, which is an amazing album. And then I started going to FYE and looking for all of the ICP albums I can find. And I dove into that and into the lore. And, you know, I remember the very first time I listened to Thy Unveiling. A buddy of mine and I were driving back from the movies or the mall or something in Alaska, and it hit. And It's a very simple song. It takes away all the subliminal messaging and just throws it right in your face. And I think from that point, we listened after it played the first time. I played it on repeat until we got back to the dorm. That was like 5 or 6 times. It might have been 3 or 4 times. I don't know. It was a long time ago. But that was the moment when I realized what the Juggalo was, what a Juggalo was, and what it meant to be a Juggalo. In my progression as being a part of the community, I've learned that it's interesting the things I've learned being a Juggalo. One of the things being it's not about what you have or what you don't have. It's about the person that you are. And if you don't love yourself, then the Juggalos are going to love you until you learn how to love yourself. And that feeling is the same feeling I had in the beginning when I got sober in AA. And that is something I want everyone to feel when dealing with Juggalos in recovery. Because that one feeling of having someone love you for who you are without knowing you, that unconditional love, is very powerful and life-changing. And it's one of the things that has helped me become the person that I am today. Because even in my lowest points now, when I feel like I can't love myself or I'm having trouble loving myself, I just got to reach out and realize people still love me for who I am, no matter what I'm dealing with or what I'm going through. And I'm able to reignite my acceptance for who I am. The journey that I've gone through in sobriety and in life has been amazing. No matter how shitty moments in my life have been, I don't regret anything. I have 0 regrets in my life because I am happy with where I am today. No matter the struggles I'm currently dealing with, no matter the relationships I need to work on, no matter the personal issues I have going on inside my head, I know that I am exactly where I need to be, and I have worked my ass off to be here. And everything I have gone through, good, bad, or neutral, has had an impact on me getting to where I am today. With that, does anyone have questions about my story before we jump into the workshop? I'm an open book. Feel free to ask anything. Go ahead.
So, Frank, what made you finally decide to go to a gathering? Especially, like, because you went to your first gathering after you had gotten sober.
Mm-hmm.
What made you do that knowing the type of lifestyle that Juggalos live?
I'm going to call it the Juggalo mindset. So I've always wanted to go to a gathering ever since I found ICP. And the only way after I got sober, so my first one was in 2016, so I was 3 years sober. I knew because of the people I had talked to online on Facebook, I knew that the gathering needed meetings. I know that the community needed a safe space to go to at the gathering because of how crazy it was. So, in spite of all of that, I mentally prepared myself and I had a passion. And my goal when I got there was to hold meetings at the gathering and make sure it was publicly known. And I'll show you the first picture of the group. So these guys, that I created that sign. We didn't have anything spectacular. We were out in Oklahoma heat, um, just having meetings, sweating our ass off. I drove out there. Luckily, it wasn't too far from my house. And we held meetings every day of the gathering. We hung out together. We did things together. It was a good time. The people in that picture, some of them don't talk to me because of differences, but I have no ill will against any of them. And one of the other people has gone through life changes that he doesn't feel comfortable coming to meetings anymore, which is fine. That's his prerogative. I saw him last gathering, I believe, and I welcomed him in with open arms if he decided he ever wanted to just come by and hang out. But I don't regret it. It's grown so much since 2016. I just knew that Juggalos needed a place to go, and I built it. And I made sure that everyone I had printed, I think the next year I had printed flyers and handouts and all kinds of stuff. And yeah, it was crazy. But yeah, there's something told me that this is what I needed to do, so I did it. It's it wasn't like it's weird, like voicing this, it sounds like I've come up with the idea and the motivation for this, but it wasn't me. I was Everything lined up perfectly for me to go to the gathering and hold meetings. The idea had always been in my head since I saw how many people were a part of just the group on Facebook. And any idea that I have when it comes to Juggalos and recovery, I do not take credit for. That's 100% the carnival, higher power, whatever, the universe, karma, whatever you want to call it. It's implanted into my head and I put it into action. But yeah, the carnival guided me and I made it happen. Any other questions? Open book, doesn't matter what they are. Go ahead, Josie.
How come it seems like all of us freaking New Englanders have almost similar stories in a sense from around the same time period? Why is New England so broken?
I can't speak on New England itself, but I can speak on my experience and my understanding. And my experience and understanding is the generation that raised us did not know how to work on themselves and break the cycle. You see it throughout history, throughout families. It takes one generation to start putting the work in to start changing. And that generation happens to be the people in this room. Doesn't matter what part of the family generations or Gen Z or Gen X or whatever the fuck you're a part of. You are the generation that's going to change something. That's what matters. And it's not just New England. I'll tell you that, Josie. I've traveled the world. It's fucking everywhere. I've heard so many. At this point, I've probably heard thousands of stories. And every story has the similar settings and issues and whatever. And it just takes one person to start changing. And that's what we do.
Yeah, I would have to say though, at this point, with some of the stuff going on, I am actually embarrassed to say that I'm from New England though, because of how pathetic some people are and some situations are. That's the sad part. That's why I said that.
I haven't been home, and I only come home to visit up to Massachusetts. I haven't been home in a few years now. Um, I mean, the last time I was home, my grandfather passed, and then before that, I don't even remember. Um, yeah. Any other questions? Go ahead, Chris. Unless you're trying to piss me off.
So, based on the rate of expansion that we've had over the last 4 or 5 years, do you ever think that we would get to the level that we're at now, the reach that we have?
So I have a different outlook than that question. I don't know where Juggalos in recovery is ever going to go to. It could drop off the face of the earth tomorrow. I don't know. I don't know what the universe has planned. I know, D, I was expecting your reaction. Just bear with me on this. All my motivation is I don't have an ultimate goal. I don't have an ultimate expectation. My my day-to-day goal with Juggalos in recovery is to make it better than it was yesterday. No matter how small the step, that's the motivation. Because one, if I have expectations, that leads me to hold resentments, leads me to have a shitty mindset, to get down on myself. I'm not doing good enough. I mean, you, D, and a lot of people in here know how many times I was like, no, I'm fucking done with this. I'm not doing shit anymore. And the reality is it's because I held an expectation of where I wanted it to go, and shit didn't go my way. And I was humbled, and I had to accept it and go with the flow and learn how to move on. But to answer your question, no, I've never thought. I hoped Juggalos in Recovery would have an impact the way it's been having, but I never expected it to. And the reason why I never expected it to was because I didn't think a random person like me could do this. I knew what I knew I wanted to, but I never thought someone like me who had so many shitty things going on, and I was not a good person in the beginning. Like, I was horrible. But I never thought I was capable of providing a space for people. I knew that I wanted to. And where Juggalos in Recovery is today has exceeded my expectations. And we're only going to continue to grow. We're only going to improve how we can help the community. There's a lot of things that I want to do, but it depends on where the universe and the carnival guides Juggalos in Recovery. It's out of my hands. It's out of every one of our hands. Like, I would have never, ever in a million years thought we would have our own dedicated meditation guru. But it's something that Juggalos in Recovery needed. And it is a major part of who we are. It's things like that that make me realize there's something bigger at play that I am not privy to, but I need to be willing to accept it as time comes along. What else you got? You got 7 more minutes to ask me questions.
So, Frank, I know you love New York sports teams,
I'll go pound sand.
but what is the reality for you for this next year for Juggalos in Recovery? What's on Frank's agenda?
Hmm. The things I want to accomplish for the next year. I want a minimum of 30 30 stories from the community to put in my book. I want to get a literary agent to start talking to publishing companies after my first draft is done. I want to start holding workshops online to start teaching the community what they need to start healing. That way they don't have to live in the pain that they currently live in. I want a space. I want us to get every volunteer possible as passionate as the majority of us are who volunteer to expand as much as the universe will let us.
Well, those are all phenomenal goals. And I'm looking forward to seeing what your book's going to look like, because the last one was really, really solid. Let's
You
see
guys
what's
want a
next.
sneak peek at the cover?
Yes.
All right, give me a second. I've got to. Instead of sharing my screen, I'm just going to add it to my my OBS. Let me make it smaller. There you go.
That's cool.
This idea for the cover came to me randomly. So I have another piece of artwork being commissioned that's going to go on my wall. It's very similar to this, but the man is standing on a brain, and the wolf is gigantic, hovering over the small, battered human, protecting the brain. Because the wolf resembles the fear, the anxiety, the unknown, and it is up to us as the consciousness that is driving this body on a daily basis to protect it from those things so we can continue growing and appreciating life. So that is where the idea for this artwork came from. Any last minute questions? It doesn't just have to be Chris. I am open to anything. Go ahead, Chris.
So Frank, the Sawzall's not the best option.
Oh my
apparently.
god. Go ahead.
So I got this jigsaw. Can I just put an extra long blade on it?
No.
Why?
1, it won't fit. 2, it's unsafe. And 3, it's dumb.
Okay, but I got long wood that's thick. I need to cut through.
Mm-hmm.
I got a sawzall, a jigsaw, and the spinny circle death machine.
The circular saw?
Is it the tiny one with the battery?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I got that, but the blade's not big enough to cut through the thick woods.
Correct. You probably have a 6-inch blade on that, which means you'll probably have to rotate the piece of wood to cut it fully. Your best bet is to use that circular saw because it's safer than your jigsaw and your sawzall cutting big pieces of wood, and then use a handsaw to cut whatever's remaining.
So
I'll
what
just
if I attach the handsaw to the sawzall?
No.
Why?
if you do make sure you film it
Yes.
for
100%.
All right, we'll do that later this afternoon.
Good luck. Make sure you wear your safety glasses and gloves
Why?
to protect yourself. Think of it as like using condoms.
I use my safety squints, you know.
Oh my god. you
You
guys are
just
horrible.
squint really hard, you'll be all right.
Yeah, I'll just put
Just
the welding
close your
goggles on
eyes.
real quick.
Just close your eyes and cut. Like, you'll be fine.
That's how I build everything, Frank.
Logan, do you have your hand raised for a question to get off this topic, or are you adding to the chaos?
No, I'm trying to help you get off of
Okay,
it a
thank
little
you.
bit.
Thank you.
I was, what made you choose to do the meetings all day for the 10th anniversary of JAR?
So I wanted to celebrate. And I actually stole this idea from AA because for holidays, like Christmas and New Year's and Thanksgiving and a couple other holidays during the year, my home group would hold meetings from early morning to whenever, all day long. and it came to me. I believe I had a couple different ideas, and this was the one that everyone liked. Um, I think I came up with it. It might have been Nate, but I know it came across my brain. But I feel like, oh, you don't count, D. Um, apparently, D came up with it. But it did come across my head. I wanted to do, that's right, I wanted to do a workshop. Um, but then it was suggested by D that we do an all day thing, which I love. And then it came to, during that discussion, it made me want the current board members to have a place to tell their story. So that's why everyone has their own 2 hour slot. One to
That's
tell this.
actually
Go ahead.
sorry. That's really cool. I actually really like this style. It works for everyone, and it also helps get everyone's stories out there, because if they've said it in the past, they can re-say it now.
Mm-hmm. And like my stories out there on so many different meetings and YouTube videos and podcasts and whatever, but that doesn't mean you're going to find them. So now we'll have one place for everyone to have their stories told. And when our board members start expanding and our volunteers start expanding, we'll get more stories involved. And those stories hopefully will be in the back of the book. But yeah, it's always it's one of the points. A lot of people give me a lot of credit, but it's never just me. I just happen to be the major face of Juggalos in Recovery. The people who give ideas and work their magic, whether it's Nate doing social media, or coming up with thumbnails, or designing, be prepared for the screen to change, designing this artwork. It's like, for me, like it's not just me. It is a group effort to accomplish the same goal. Um, and I struggled for so long in the beginning with Juggalos in Recovery because I tried to do everything myself. And it came to a point when I was learning video editing, audio mixing, the paperwork side of running a nonprofit, taxes, setting up bank accounts, getting tax ID numbers, graphic arts, graphic design, website building. You name it, I've done it when it comes to Juggalos in Recovery. I have probably forgot 90% of what I've learned at this point because it's just so much. This group cannot run without everyone's help. But that is a good question, and I'm glad people are liking this setup because I would like to do this more often.